Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that you're here. Today is March the 19th, and we are here in Kansas City, Missouri today, broadcasting from Kansas City, and here visiting my son and his wife and my granddaughter and my new grandson, which is pretty awesome. Being blessed by this little guy who's been circling the earth now for just, let's see, 13, 14 days, I think. So, welcome. Glad you're here. And we are delighted that we get this opportunity. Once again, welcome, Don. Wintel, glad you're here. Jeannie. And of course, the floor is open. If anyone has a question or a thought for us, then please push the call button. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? What's on your mind? And we do have a question that came in via text. I got one this morning from a young lady who's been listening to or involved in the work for, I don't know, 20 some years, and is looking for some resolution in the arena of relationships. So if we have no other questions or thoughts, I will jump right into that topic. And I'd rather have a live conversation. If you have a thought for us, push the call button, or you can put your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be glad to read those comments and play the game out. Of course, our work is about the amazing and most profound first century Aramaic process of forgiveness. And I say this over and over and over again, and people say, well, Michael, you say things over and over. I say, yeah, there's a reason. Because if we've been programmed to think backward, welcome, Susan, then in thinking backward, our mind distorts everything, and especially about this idea of forgiveness, which the whole culture has totally and completely backward. The whole culture, everywhere you go. And I can remember when I was writing my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? One of the things I did is several times I went to some of the major bookstores, where they have a place where you can sit down and relax and read. And I would go through all of the books I could find on forgiveness from every perspective, whether it was a rabbi or a priest or a minister, whether it was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, a philosopher. I went through book after book after book after book. And in the last analysis, every one of them, I don't mean most of them, I don't mean some of them, I mean every one of them, sooner or later, if they were talking about their interaction with the client, if they were describing the conversation, they'd listen to their client and then they'd ask them the question that turns everything in the mind backward. And the question would be, well, how did that make you feel? If you are working with someone who asks you the question, how did that make you feel? Please become very conscious and know that now you're working in the realm of the mind alone. You're not working in the realm of truth if somebody asks that question. Well, Michael, what do you mean by that? If I ask, if you're, let's say we're processing something, and I ask you how that made you feel, I've just communicated to you that something outside of you is the cause of what's moving inside of you, which means if you answer my question, then you're living in denial, the same denial I am. Nothing beyond nothing can make you feel anything. But if you believe that something can make you feel, as the Greek philosophers have told us, that made me angry, they upset me, they hurt me, they caused me all this pain, then you're living in denial and you're dissociated from the truth. You're dissociated from the real cause of what those feelings are about or what those emotions are about. And so when that happens, then of course everything else gets turned backward. Now you're told, of course, if they're the ones who make you feel, of course, then you are obligated to let them off the hook for what's going on inside of you. And you can let somebody else off the hook till the cows come home. And when you let them off the hook for a moment, it may seem like, okay, now things are better. But the truth is, you're going to go right back to the denial, the dissociation. They made me feel. So as I say, I mean, I literally spent hours reading all these different books, and all of the therapists, all of the ministers, all of the rabbis, all of the priests were living in the Greek philosophical world of how did that make you feel? We're going to reverse that. I'm not going to ever ask you. You can go back through 15 years of archives, 5 days a week, thousands of hours. You will never once hear me ask a person how something in their lives made them feel. You'll hear me ask a different question. And I invite you to start asking yourself this question if you've been thinking that something outside of you is what makes you feel. And the question you ask yourself is, what did that bring up in me? So if I'm working in the realm of truth, then I'm processing with someone and they tell me about these terrible feelings that came up in them, then instead of inviting them into playing the game of denial and blaming somebody else, I'm going to ask them to be responsible for what came up in their own minds. So rather than how did that make you feel, what did that bring up for you? And do you understand what's at the root of what that is inside of you that causes that? And do you know how to remove that from your mind? Do you know how to forgive that? Now we're playing a whole different game. Where in one case, how did that make you feel? You now have somebody working in the realm of perception, in the realm of the mind, in the realm of the lie. And you can work in the realm of the lie and make improvements. You work with somebody, how did that make you feel? And then you forgive them. And, you might feel a little better. The root feeling isn't going to go away. That's why I titled my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Because until you address what's inside of you, those feelings are never going to disappear. And my take is that authorities who understand what they're doing when they brainwash people purposely instill guilt and fear and sadness and rage so that at any time in the future they pull that chain in that person's mind, they're in control of them. When you work in the realm of the lie, it's kind of, again, you can get improvements, but it's kind of like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It doesn't matter that you're close to the band and you can hear the music better. It doesn't matter you're at the very back end of the ship so that you're going to be the last one to drown in the freezing water. The ship is going down. Perception is going down. It's time to forego, forgive, and remove yourself from the world of perception and start to move into the realm of actuality. So if I'm in pain and trauma, my thinking is in error. And if I'm working with someone who assists me and supports me in putting that outside of myself by asking me the question, how did that make you feel? Like somebody out there could possibly cause me to feel anything. Then I'm in support. I'm working with someone who's in support of the lie. Now you can improve the lie a little bit, but you're never going to resolve it. And so the objective of this work is to become fully conscious and aware that what's going on inside of me is mine. And a requirement of that means that I'm going to have to get honest and truthful with myself. Now, honest and truthful means there are things inside of me. There are things in my relationships. There are things in my life that are not healthy, are not wholesome. There are relationships and people in my lives who do things who do things that are not in track or on track with love, on track with human life, or on track with truth. And that can be a painful thing to acknowledge and look at. But when I can look at it in truth, and I can look at it from a space of conscious, active, present love, that's when I begin the transformation of whatever that it is. So you'll never hear me ask you how that made you feel, but you'll hear me ask, what did that bring up for you? Now, are you willing to explore what the underlying mind energy is for yourself or for another? And that might have you having to look at some hard things. One of the reasons the whole game of denial and dissociation and blame developed is because it's easier. I don't have to look at the hard facts, the fact that other people aren't perfect or I'm not perfect. I've done a lot of work over the years, over the decades in the prison system. I've been in, golly, I don't know, I can't count how many prisons I've been in. The worst one was Rikers. It was just the energy. Just walking into Rikers prison, I remember that so well. It's just like, oh my God. But you know something? All the people I worked with in prison, almost to the last number, were actually perfect people. And the reason they were in jail is because of somebody else. The person they'd victimized, it was their fault. The policeman who arrested them, it was their fault. The detective who investigated their crime, it was their fault. The judge who sentenced them, it was their fault. And you'll notice that our forgiveness work is a no-fault process. We're not looking to establish fault. It's got nothing to do with fault. There's an interesting point in the scriptures that says, each person is justified in their own wisdom. The person who's at the very bottom of the barrel, if you would, look at humanity and do an assessment of people who are destructive in the world, are justified in their own wisdom. Out of their pain, out of their trauma, the person who does the crazy, controlling, destructive things that they do are doing it because what's in their brain cell structure, coming from what we call the automatic decision system, is what guides them into their action and activity. Behind that is a being. For this work, the search is for the being. And, metaphorically, what I see as I'm working with someone is it's almost like my effort is from a space of active present love, reaching out that hand of love in through that body mind unit that's in pain or trauma or turmoil. And again, metaphorically, taking that being, taking that love by the hand of love and assisting them to come into their own form and therefore displace the self-inflicted trauma and pain or the generationally unresolved patterns that they hold in their bodies, in their minds, and in their genes. And remember that the mind functions, everything that happens, everything that shows up in perception is a result of resonance in the mind and reaches all the way down into the genes and back through all the generations for the information that it pulls forward to build this world that we see. We think we see it through our eyes. We think perception is something we're looking at through our eyes, and few realize that the world of perception, the world they think they see, is actually painted on the inside of their eyeballs by their own minds. And the objective here is to recognize that whatever's painted on the inside of my eyeballs is going to be a reflection of what generationally I have been brought into this world to express as. And then there's the truth of being. So what we're looking to do is to strengthen, to again, metaphorically, hold the hand of the being and assist the energy of being to incarnate in this form, which brings a power into physiology where these generational patterns are stored that displaces, that just literally, when using the breath, blows off the energetic patterns of limitation, of pain, or trauma. And sometimes looking at honestly what's going on at oneself and at the people in one's life can be a challenge. So that's the objective of this work. That's where we're going. And if you have a question or thought for us, you could jot it in the chat room, or you could push the call button and we could have a conversation. And if the call button doesn't click in the next minute or so, then I'm going to read this question that came in to the to my text this morning. So it's from a young lady. Actually, she acknowledges in the text that she's 85 now. She's been involved in doing this work for about 80, pardon me, for about 20, I don't know, 22 or 23 years. And she just recently, she points out in her text that she celebrated her 85th birthday, Eternal Day. Vital, vital young lady. And that she's still living out some childhood dynamics and is ready to work on those on the next level. So she starts out saying, I was programmed by my dearly departed father from early childhood, who often repeated the idea that, quote, you'll never know a man who loves you as much as your father does. So we'll stop there and, just start with that and go through some thoughts in that regard. So my offering would be, first of all, to recognize that that's a power person message. And remember that power person message is something that comes into the mind, usually for someone who has more power over our lives than we do. At any given moment is not functioning as love, maybe appears to be functioning as love, but maybe isn't. And when the child, and it's usually between a parent and a child, when the child perceives that situation as survival, then, imagine recognizing that the body mind unit is an energy system. When those three conditions are met, the energy field opens like, a child, a 3-5-year-old child. It's like their energy becomes fully receptive and literally absorbs everything that comes. And I see we have a caller, a hand up, so let's say hello to our caller. Miss Carrie. How are you, young lady?
Buenas tardes.
Hey, welcome, Eric. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Well, good. I hear you guys have been moving around the country.
Yep. Actually, just around the town.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, we caretake a place, and then the owners come for a couple months each year, and so we move out. And this year we just moved uh, within 5 minutes from them, so we could spend some time with them. And
Oh, that's handy.
they're they're like 80, 80, a little above 80, and so and then we moved back yesterday, and they left and went back to the States. But they're very sweet, and it's a good relationship, good co-supportive relationship, and it's
Nice.
really, yeah.
So here
And
you are in Mexico, house
yeah,
sitting, and you've
yeah,
been doing that now for what? 7
gosh,
years
like
now, eh?
8 years. Yep.
Hmm.
And
Very
I
cool.
love it. I've actually done house sitting for about 15 years. Whoops, I'm disappearing here.
Well, that's about the time you were at our last intensive, isn't it? That's probably about 15
Yeah.
years ago when we were up in Michigan.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
That was a great
Absolutely.
intensive. That was awesome.
That was really fun. And
Yeah, having that house, for those who are listening, we had rented a house and they didn't have enough refrigeration for doing our food. And Carrie was actually handling the food. It was awesome. But it was wintertime, and they had a porch, and all you had to do was open the windows on the porch. The porch was not heated, there was no water in it, and we had this huge outdoor refrigerator. That's
Right.
one of my memories of that intensive.
Was that Howell, Michigan? I'm trying to remember where that was.
Um, I think it
Can't
was.
remember.
I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but I think it was.
yeah, I think it was. But anyway, neither here nor there. But yes, and being at your intensives has always been really uplifting, deepening of the journey. And you just did a breath work. Did you just do a breath work workshop last week, or do it with a few clients?
Well, I actually did a week of quantum still point. There's a new process that I'm working with that I've called quantum still point because it moves beyond just the still point breathing process, and it's a training. It's a 3 or 5 day personal intensive. Since we haven't opened Heartland since 2019, I've started to do one-on-one personal intensives. And in this particular case, I was working with this gentleman who's been a friend for over 50 years, a fellow naturopath,
Wow.
and I had done an abbreviated quantum still point on him when I was in Florida, and he just got some, monumental changes. And so I've been kind of, I don't have anybody that, or I didn't have anybody that could do it to me, although I had, to the degree that I could. It involves some physiological energy work that's kind of difficult to do on yourself.
Mm.
So I was able to carry it out to a certain degree, but not fully. So I did a training with him, and then had 3 other people who came and did the quantum still point as part of it. So we trained in energy field work, and did that quantum process. And I got to have it done on
Well,
me, which was
I remember in doing breath work with you, in a way, we could almost go into samadhi or suspended animation, so to speak. I don't know if that's
that's it. Yeah.
how is, and is the quantum still point kind of that direction?
Well, it's actually a training process of one, remembering that in the Aramaic language, Satan is not the dude with the red suit, the tail, and the pitchfork. It is literally an internal dynamic. And the
Right,
definition of Satan in Aramaic is the resistor, one who misleads. And if you watch the average person, if they're in one of their issues and you say to them, have you ever thought about the fact that you've been through this 87 different times with 42 different people, and this is yours? And what they do is they tend to hold their breath and tighten everything up, go into resistance. It's like, and the resistance is about hiding from themselves what that thought resonates in them, like it might be their responsibility, because most people interpret responsibility as blame, self-blame, blame of others and such.
right,
And so part of it, and why it's a 3 day process, is about recognizing where the resistance is and softening into that resistance, getting to experience. Most people, where they're in resistance, experience it as pain. They create disease processes in their tissue structure wherever
right,
there's resistance. And so they experience it as disease and pain. And so, 2 things: it's about softening into that and letting go of the resistance, being able to embrace whatever energy is in physiology. So, the second part of the definition of Satan, the resistance, now we're handling. And then one who misleads is, virtually everybody, when you invite them to be responsible for what's going on, go into that resistance state, and then they have the story about how this, well, no, this is about somebody else, and there is the mislead, and most people in the world are living literally, in the Aramaic sense, trapped in Satan. So it's about overcoming that physiologically and recognizing that the resistance has created stuck points of energy, and being able to embrace and open that energy. And that, when most people think, when you remember this from the energy field work that we did in the intensive, most people think when the baby's soft spot hardens that the head is fixed, but it's not. And I know you know this. I'm saying this for the others who are
right, right,
participating who may not. But literally, if we were to look closely at the bony structure of the human form, that bony structure is an antenna that
mm,
is designed to be the baby's soft spot. When it hardens, is it solidifies the bone there, but the bone, if you look at a skull, you'll see sutures. The bones of the head and the bones of the arms, legs, the whole structure are in constant motion. In other words, in one state, it's called extension, they're one shape, and then they go through a range of motion and they go to what's called flexion, and they're another state.
Wow.
And the shape of an antenna determines the frequencies it receives. You know, if I go to Buffalo, New York, and I pull an antenna off of somebody's roof and I bring it down here to Kansas City, I'm not going to get very good reception because
Wow.
there are frequency patterns that they use in Buffalo that are different here. And so a different shape antenna is going to render a poor picture and poor sound. So you need the,
Wow.
you know, if you look at an antenna, you got, you know, all the different lengths of arms and such. If somebody goes up, if I have a perfect picture and somebody goes up and bends all the arms on the antenna, my picture's going to go wacky or my sound is going to go out, because the shape of an antenna determines the frequencies it receives, and the orientation of the antenna will add into that. If we look at what was called the Lord's Prayer, the Lord's Prayer is not a prayer, it's a set of instructions. You know, the disciples didn't know what prayer meant, so they asked, teach us how to do it. They didn't say a prayer to us, which, you know, the Greek world took, oh, well, we're going to say this prayer. The Lord's Prayer is not a prayer. It's a set of instructions for how to align and orient your antenna, orient yourself so that you properly interact with that energy field in which you live, move, and have your being, which was called love or the creator. And when we're properly aligned, then we have a proper energy exchange. You know, the reason why my TV picture is poor is because there's not a proper signal exchange between the energy signal in the air and the antenna itself. If I align it properly and orient it properly, then I'm going to get 100% exchange. I'm going to get a good picture and sound. So when people go into this resistor and lock down tissue, they literally distort the function of the antenna.
Wow. That is
So,
amazing.
so the other part of it
Can you
is
say that
about,
one more
and
time, Michael?
you, say again?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah,
Last
yeah.
one, one more
When
time.
people go into the state of resistance, you know, just, you know, anybody who's listening, just think about your biggest trauma in your life, and notice what happens to your breath, and notice what happens to your physiology. What does it do? It tightens up. When you tighten up, you lock down the antenna. When the antenna is locked down, it can no longer move through its proper range of motion.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And therefore, you limit the range of frequencies you're able to receive. So the still point breathing process is about getting to, and many people describe it as samadhi because that's what the samadhi experience is. The still point is a place where the breath spontaneously stops and you become a superconductor. You go into high speed, fast forward process, and you can literally move through years of trauma in seconds in that state.
That's
Well,
incredible.
so putting people in process. Love is conscious, active, and present, and one is a state where the resistance is reduced, and therefore things can move. So that's the still point breathing process. What quantum still point adds to it is literally going to the core points on the antenna that have been locked out of phase, have been locked out of the proper range of motion, and therefore have distorted the structure, and bringing the structure, letting loose of what's been locked in the structure so that the self-adjusting antenna can go back to its proper range of motion and pull in all the energetic frequencies that it's designed to pull in. And
Nice.
having let go of resistance, the antenna just, once you mobilize it, it goes into deeper and deeper recovery of what it's designed for. A la, you know, what was called the Lord's Prayer. It's like, here's how you align and orient yourself. But if one has long term, has been physiologically locked down, you know, and as we talked to Tiffany the other day, she was talking about, you know, how she's going in and doing deep tissue work, which is releasing and allowing the system to become mobilized. Well, the quantum still point is a specific method of going in and letting loose of the antenna, or restoring its integrity and motion. And
Mhm.
then, are you familiar with the science of cymatics?
Yes.
So for anybody who isn't, cymatics basically is just how sound impacts matter. If you jump on YouTube and you just put in the word cymatics, Cymatics, you'll see lots of videos. And the most basic one, they'll take, like, say, for instance, a drum head from a drum. They'll put sand on it, and then they'll feed frequencies into it. And all of a sudden, this sand that's laying on the drum head moves into these awesome geometric shapes. And when you change the frequency, the whole thing, the whole structure changes.
Right.
Structure impacted by sound. Well, when you think about this little flap of skin in our throats that we've learned how to blow air over and represent frequencies, and you recognize cymatics, then in and around, especially that area of the structure, the somatic influence of someone who's lived in rage and pain and trauma and abuse, that energy has been locked into that tissue. And
Right.
so it involves opening a space to let loose of that cymatic influence that has distorted the tissue structure. And then restoring the voice, recognizing I'm going to use my voice for frequencies that are designed for life rather than use my voice for frequencies designed for darkness.
Mm.
So letting that release happen, opening the antenna, restoring its proper range of motion, and one of the main upshots that I'm seeing with it, the feedback I'm getting, and I've only been doing this now. It's a private one-on-one thing I've been doing. I've only done it with about a dozen or so people now, and the feedback that I'm getting, that's the quantum leap beyond just still point, is that, and I'm realizing out of this, I hadn't realized this previous to doing the quantum process with people, but most people are addicted to the trauma that's stored in carbon-based memory.
Yes. Right.
It's an addiction. When
Definitely.
when it's resonated, they're just right in it and locked in it. They're in their drama and trauma
Yep.
conversation, their blame conversation, and it's literally an addiction, hard to break.
Yes. Yeah.
And the feedback that I'm getting is what this does is it breaks the addiction to what's in carbon-based
Right.
memory. So
Right.
it doesn't mean all the work is done, but the consistent feedback that I'm getting now is, oh, well, that issue that whenever it came up before yesterday, I would just go berserk with. Now
Right.
it comes up and I go, oh, I have a piece of work to do
Right.
rather than getting
Right.
lost in it. So
Michael,
that's quantum still point. So I did that
you-
last 2 weeks ago.
I have
So
a brother in one of my MKP circles that I've been working with for over a year. We speak every other week, um, and he's coming up because I'm at a at a wall with him. When he was born, there was something with him, jaundice. I think he was taken away. He wasn't got taken to the mother. He was taken to another room for 3 days.
right,
Then whenever he was
insanity.
growing up and he got yes, and he got lost in the grocery store, couldn't find mom, he'd freak out. Then recently, 3 years ago, he found mom dead. And so
Ouch. Bless his
he's
heart.
this is 3 years later. I know, but 3 years later, it's still fresh. 3 years later, he
Yeah.
still can't get on with his life.
And
Three
he's a
years later,
therapist.
and he's a therapist. He has the techniques, but what I'm hearing and what you're saying with the quantum still point is that his antenna's locked. It's locked
Yeah.
into pain
If
and
you don't
suffering.
break
That's
through
all he can talk
physiology,
about is the pain and suffering.
yep. Yeah. If you don't break through the physiology, then it takes the energetic dynamic of active present love flowing through tissue to burn off or blow off those kinds of energetic experiences. And if the antenna isn't capable of bringing them in, it's that's where people seem to be stuck in a dead end space.
Which is why body electronics worked,
Yes, ties right
and
in.
because we were going right into the pain. I have a couple of questions. One is, uh, and it kind of ties back into what you're talking about, is Ruka. I always like years ago, what I learned from you was you could call it the Holy Spirit, you could call it Jesus, you could call it whoever you wanted to ask for help. But it seems like these days you're looking at Ruka more as the breath. And then I know it's a feminine principle. So could it be God masculine, God feminine, plus the spirit, plus the Christed energy that comes from that? Or basically, are you seeing Ruka as the breath these days? Is my main question. Because when I've been doing the worksheets, I'm thinking about that. And
Right.
I'd love for you to go into the Lord's Prayer a little bit. I know you have it at your website, but it'd be fun to hear a little of that in relationship to this.
Okay.
Two good questions.
Well, my first offering would be that, you know, Ruka Dekudsha are the words that were used to describe in the creation story what the creator sent out, that the Greeks translated as breath, or pardon me, that the Greeks translated as Holy Spirit.
Right.
So
That's what I
that's
was
always
thinking.
been accurate. It's always been in Aramaic, and by definition, the if we were to try to put and one of the challenges is that we're trying to put into words something that can't be spoken.
Mm,
You listen to the Course of Miracles. The Course says the truth can't be spoken in words. The words we talked about this in yesterday's show. Words can give us instructions for how to carry out and achieve a result or have an experience, but they can't give us the experience. Most people are hanging out like, give me the experience with words, words, words. No, you can't. Actually, you've got to drop that. You've got to collapse perception. And that's what opens the higher faculties where the direct experience occurs. So all the words are just a set of instructions to try and take us there. And you can't fully embody like Ruka Dekudsha. Here's the creator, inconceivable, like who can fathom what that means? And who can fathom what the creator's breath might be that infuses life into us?
mm,
Like, how do we get that into? It's like, we got this 8-foot 2x4 and we're trying to put it in the 8-inch space between our ears.
right.
Not likely to happen. However, in the definition in Aramaic, at least the best one we've found to date, is that it is a feminine, and like for instance in the French or the Spanish language, things are gendered feminine and masculine.
Right. Right.
Well, in the Aramaic, it's the same. They're gendered feminine
Mm,
and masculine. And in this
interesting.
case, this would be considered to be the feminine aspect of God. She
Right.
who undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth.
That really makes sense to me. That it's like a positive and negative charge, a masculine and feminine composite that makes up the whole, and the feminine clears us of our errors
That shows us the truth.
and shows
So
us.
recognizing that, then if this is the breath coming into us, you'll remember there's a scriptural quote, and I've watched a lot of people suffer over this one, where they quote Yeshua as having said, the denial of the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin.
Right.
Now,
Mm.
do you know how to raise your arm? Merrick, do you know
Yeah.
how to raise your arm? You're a bright guy. Do you know how to raise your arm?
Well, according to the way I was taught, yeah.
But I didn't ask you if you could do it. I asked you if you knew how.
Yes.
You do. Okay. Well, if you would, could you tell me what brain cells fire at what voltages? Which nerve pathways to which muscles? And what is the stress on the contracting muscle compared to the release on the relaxing muscle that allows you to raise your arm? Could you tell me how it's done?
No.
The best physiologist in the world doesn't have a clue. We got some shadowy words around it, but the truth is we don't know how to do it. But there's something in us that does.
Yes. So my
We
body
give
knows
the
how,
instruction,
and I just give the
and
command.
that power carries it out.
Yes.
So
Okay. Beautiful.
people who've suffered over this insane Greek idea of there's an unforgivable sin, the denial of the Holy Spirit, when you realize that the only thing that moves energy in us is based in and has a reliance on breath. Like if breath disappears, blood isn't going to move for very long. Heart isn't going to function very long. Brain cells aren't going to fire for long. So the removal of the breath inhibits everything that happens in physiology. And so when you hear that, and I use a visual for me personally when I think of the breath, and I realize there's something painful in my cellular structure that I need to move out of there, whether it's emotional or physical, is I'm going to soften, I'm going to let go of resistance, and I imagine as I breathe that there's this power that scoops into the cell and pulls out the trash, what doesn't
Wow.
belong. And that's pulling out of the trash is forgiveness. So in Aramaic,
Mhm.
that comment turns totally backward from what the Greeks interpret as most everything is. And what you hear is that long form, there's a power in you that moves everything. If there's something in you that needs to be removed, that is forgiven, then you're going to have to rely on that power. The denial of that power leaves you in unforgiveness. It's not the unforgivable sin. It's just that it's the thing that moves the energy in your structure. And if you withhold the breath, it doesn't move. So you're now stuck in unforgiveness. You realize you've got this anger, rage, hate, fear, whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm ready to be done with this. I'm ready to let go of this. And I'm going to hold my breath and see if I can get rid of it. Well, good luck. Because the power that moves it, the only power behind all the movement in the structure, the breath, if it's held, the energy doesn't move. That's why on the worksheet, you'll see at several germane points, there's a reminder to breathe.
Breathe, absolutely.
Because at
I
each
love
step,
reading
you
all those.
want the assistance of this feminine elemental force in you that one undoes the effects of your errors. Here I am. I'm in forgiveness. Do I know how to move this old rage out of my tissue structure? No, but breath does. If I am finished with my rage, if I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be done, I'm ready to heal this totally, and I soften and I breathe into it, and I find the goal that's tied into showing me this rage, and I cancel it, then the next thing I do, you notice step 5B in the worksheet, is you invite the super processor, you invite the feminine elemental force that undoes the effects of yours to be active in you. But if you say that in your head, but you don't breathe, there's no action in you to do the work. And then the second part of Ruka. So it's she who undoes the effects of our errors, the breath, literally, and delivers to us or teaches us the truth. When I'm ready to shut down the insanity, the hostility and fear-based mind, no matter how justified I am, no matter how much I can establish, they're guilty, they did it to me, it was terrible, it was awful, it was evil, it was ugly, it was, and okay, I agree, I'm with you, that's all true. But you're the one who's holding that energy now. If you need to keep it so you can keep blaming somebody, well, okay, hang on to it. It'll be there as long as you need to. And you will not allow your breath to go into those places where that energy is stored as long as you're holding on to it. But when I choose to truly let go, second step, once I've established the goal in the situation, I've canceled the goal that's driving my perception to utilize this pained energy to produce my reality. Then canceling that goal, I'm going to invite this super processor, Ruka in, and I'm going to breathe. And as I do, with my own willingness, it reaches into the depths of whatever's in the cell, scoops it out, removes it. And then delivered with that breath is the presence of love. And the second aspect of Ruka is teaches me the truth.
That's right.
So now I'm in a receptive state where I'm not counting on my senses to learn. I didn't go to a book and I'm going to read the truth. So that can be helpful. It can be useful in guiding us and go, oh, here are the tools to produce that result. But it's going to be produced when I really fully breathe and I'm in my structure, alive as the presence of love, dissolving whatever doesn't belong, and then being receptive to what is this breath? What is this presence of love got to show me that needs to be removed from my structure?
Right. Very deep and very good. We have can you are you hearing me, Michael?
Loud and clear. Yeah. Yeah.
Um Tiffany has said for the last couple days she's stuck on doing worksheets, so we're going to do some worksheets with her this afternoon.
Right.
Um, but any suggestions? I've been trying to encourage her to call in and do one with you, but I don't know if she's quite ready for that. So
Well,
it may be
whatever.
just
Yeah.
us here.
Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. Any suggestions on somebody being stuck?
Well, where's she still?
Well, if there were any specific questions, um, you know, there are at least 25 now, I think, radio shows on in the archives and the special shows on our website where
Oh,
we've
that's a good
walked somebody through. Say again?
right. That's a good suggestion. I can look those up.
So listening to those will give, and each worksheet, the issues going on, the personality doing it, each one has a different um, piece of information, a different gift for
Right.
understanding the whole process.
Right. And the whole idea of, if we've had trauma and we have that pain and we're carrying it around and our antenna being kind of stuck in that habit pattern or in that expression of living in that expression of that pain, then even a worksheet, the breath is one way into it, and then a worksheet is another way to start accessing.
Yes, and do all of the above. Make sure you breathe while you're doing the worksheet.
Right. Yes.
As you were talking just now, Michael, I could feel the resonance within my body, and my left brain's telling me, okay, I'm getting more brain cells activated. And every time I listen to you, I get more and more and more, each another tidbit, another tidbit. And I'm so grateful for that.
I'm with you 100%. I recognize for myself, I've been engaging with the Aramaic Yeshua for 45 or 46 years now. And I was
Wow.
doing this work full time for 5 or 6 years before that. And I just recognize this idea that he presented. It's his idea. You got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. If
Right.
you
Oh,
don't, then your mind can't support you in moving to the next level. And so each time a set of brain cells, one of the things that I've recognized is that, most people, it's about an intellectual journey. And the intellectual journey is necessary once the first question's asked. Because once the first question is asked, until it's answered, that damn mind won't shut up. And to really heal, you got to be out of your mind. So when you, oh, that's what, okay, I got that. Now one can move into the sound of silence, literally getting into that quiet space where now I'm available to be taught by Ruka. And the subtlety of the energy that comes through the direct higher senses is just like the slightest bit of noise in the mind, and it's covered over. It's not available. That's why it was called the still small voice.
Right.
And
do
so
these?
building the brain cells gets that question out of the way. Now that the questions have been answered and I've got a foundation that can support me in garnering truth, all of a sudden the space is there for it to be received. And once again, such an important part of it is it's received on the breath. It's
Mm,
delivered by the breath. Someone who isn't breathing isn't going to go there.
a left brain question just came up. Does Jesus' Aramaic teaching, Yeshua's, lead towards transition into an etheric body, what some know as the light body?
Well, my take would be my comprehension from the left brain would be actually quite the reverse. Rather than transitioning into a light body, it would be bringing the light body into our form,
Ah, beautiful.
incarnating in this world. So the whole idea would be incarnation of that being. You know, there's a point in the scriptures that says there is a light in a man, and if that light does not shine, there is darkness in the world. And
I
so
love it.
to me, the
Yes.
objective is to bring the light, the
Ah,
being, the created essence love that we are, literally into and
so-
having it fuel every cell in our form. And when we do that, when we're, the word prayer in Aramaic is translated properly means to set a trap for God. And
right,
that sounds kind of weird at first, but literally when I align, when my antennas in proper range of motion, I'm aligned, then I'm capturing the energy of that field in which I live, move, and have my being, and I get it reflected into the world. The same way as if the TV antenna is properly oriented and aligned, then it captures channel two, and I get a beautiful signal coming through the
right.
instrument. This, to me, the body mind unit is just an instrument. And if, the gateway that's required for the human light and love to enter the human form is closed, and that gateway was called Rahma. And he said to Yeshua, "What's most important in the law?" They're in essence saying, "How do you get to really truly be a human being?" And what he says is not what the Greeks translate. He doesn't say, "Love God and neighbor as yourself." He says, "Have Rahma when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, for by so doing you maintain self." So Rahman
Oh,
is, and like there's no word that even resembles the meaning of that word in Aramaic, in our English language or the Greek or the Latin, the places most people get the teachings of Yeshua from. There's no such idea. And Rahman is a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that, when active, is the gateway that love enters the human form. There are two other filters or gateways. One's called hostility and one's called fear. Only one of
mm,
those filters can be active at a time. If hostility or fear is active, then that gateway rock is closed down. There is no human life. How, how
ah,
could how could a human being do such terrible things as we see happen in the world? Because there is no human life in someone who's in hostility or fear. The gateway's
Do
closed for human
hostility and
life.
fear have words in Aramaic?
Say it
right.
again.
Do hostility and fear have words in Aramaic?
I'm sure they do, but that hasn't been my focus. The focus has been on the Brahma aspect of it.
Right. Right.
Darkness.
Yeah.
A man, evil would be one of the words, and
Right.
evil in
Same.
Aramaic is an archery term, much like sin and evil. So sin, you fire at the target with your bow and arrow, and you miss the target, and the scorekeeper yells sin. All it means is you're off the mark. That would be one. The second one
Right.
would be evil, which is another archery term, and if you fired at the target and you miss the target altogether, then that would be called evil.
Right.
So if that's what's active in a person, then Rachma is not active. So working toward forgiving, literally shaving off the energetic dynamics of hostility or fear from inside of physiology, so that each time you forgive, you weaken those frequencies in your mind. And the weaker they are, the more possible it is to hear the still small voice, because the noise is gone.
Right.
So when Rachma is active, two things occur. Love enters human form. That's where the part of the translation from by the Greeks. It's not about loving your neighbor or yourself. It's about maintaining your human life, which is love,
Right.
incarnating your human life. And then the second function of that filter is that any intentions held in the frontal lobes of the brain, this is a filter physiologically in the frontal lobes of the brain, and any intention based in hostility or fear is blocked by that filter, just like infrared light's blocked by the covering we put on the window. Those energies are blocked. So now the only intentions available in a mind with Rachma active are those based in love. And that's important because intentions are the raw material of goals, and goals are the thing that drive behaviors. That's why goals are at the core of the forgiveness process. Because if I'm in a behavior based in hostility or fear, then that behavior based in hostility or fear is reinforced by the lack, or it's able to proliferate because the dissolving influence of active present love is not there. As I weaken through forgiveness those frequencies, then the presence of love becomes more obvious. The subtle, still small voice of love becomes more obvious. And ultimately, my take is that physiologically, we are designed for every cell to be fueled by active present love. And again, the Lord's Prayer is, or what was called a prayer, it's not a prayer at all, is an instruction set for aligning and orienting our whole human energy system to fulfill our original purpose, which is to be the light of the world. You know, Yeshua, when he said the words, I am the light of the world, the only thing he changed when he turned that statement around to, you are the light of the world, was the pronoun. It's what each of us are designed to be.
Right. Very
And
beautiful.
the Greek idea that talks about Yeshua as being the only begotten Son, in Aramaic, it says first begotten. Hey, he's the first guy that showed up and said, hey, we can function fully as active present love. Look, I got the high priest servant I know is going to slaughter me. He's just been injured by my friend John, and I'm going to heal him. He demonstrates what most humans find inconceivable. You mean the guy who's going to have you mercilessly slaughtered, you reached out and healed his severed ear? What are you, nuts? That'll get you killed. And you're right. That got Yeshua killed. And people who point that out to me, I say, well, okay, I noticed that doing that, functioning as love toward his what the world would call his arch enemy, got him dead. But did you notice they couldn't keep him that way?
That's right.
Wow.
Very
He didn't
good.
come to teach us the power of suffering and death, the cross, as people put out there. He came to
Right.
teach us how to function as love, and that if our physiology is fueled by love, you can't kill it.
That's right. Cool, Michael. It's
Wow.
always awesome to hear such incredibly good things from you, and we'll be back.
Honored and delighted. You have a blessed one.
All right. You
Thank you,
too.
brother. Love you.
All right. Have a blessed one. Everybody, thanks for joining us. There are a couple of comments. I got kind of caught in the ta-ta for now, Joe. See you. And Don, thanks for that comment. There's a book out there called The Body Keeps the Score. You might want to check that out. And that's exactly what it does. Every energy is put into the structure. And if you remove it, then you're freed from it. If you don't, then the body keeps the score. Good input, Don. Thank you. Appreciate it. Everybody, have the best year yet of your eternal life. Thanks for being with us. Pass a link to the show on. It'll be in YouTube within the next day or two. And thanks for joining us. Blessings. Bye-bye.